Hello, viewers. This is Vibhuti Jha. This is Jaipur Dialogue USA. Welcome to the show. As always, I'll request you to please like, subscribe, and support our channel, both Jaipur Dialogue and Jaipur Dialogue USA, as we go forward. Today is a very interesting day as we are coming to the close of a very tumultuous year in 2024 towards 2025. Now, this to analyze, evaluate, and ponder over the events and happenings. I have great pleasure in welcoming Shri PVR Narasimha Rao ji, whom you all know. PVR ji, namaskar, sir. Welcome to the show. And
Namaste, Vibhuti.
thank you, sir. The point which I am going to talk to you about that we have talked a couple of times in the past in 2024 with reference to political turmoil. And as I always say, that social, technology, economics, and politics always has an intertwining impact on life around us. Everything affects everything. Broader topic of social, technology, economics, and politics, and then we can do subdivision of issues. But this is the broad topic under which life changes. Everything impacts everything. So technology shift of this kind enables us to talk the way we are doing, which was not possible 10 years ago. Think about it from that point of view. So everything affects. So, Rao Saab, I want you to shoot off. What were you very thrilled about 2024, and what was most disappointing about 2024?
Well, what I'm most thrilled about in 2024 is Modi coming back, winning the third term. Though I was confident that he will win, I was a little concerned because I saw as I said in my annual predictions video at the beginning of 2024, this was Rahul Gandhi's best chance in life to basically become the prime minister, even though it was very unlikely that he would take advantage of that opportunity. I was pretty confident that Modi ji will come back, but I had some fear, some suspicion that they may be overconfident and there may be some disappointment. So though there was a disappointment, they still came through strongly. So even though they needed to depend on a couple of allies, it's really important for India that Narendra Modi ji would come back. If in case basically Congress came back, it would have been disaster for India. We would have gone back by a couple of decades in terms of progress that we have achieved in the last decade or so. And then to come back to the same position would have been really difficult. So the thing that I am most thrilled about is Narendra Modi ji winning his third term. And the thing that I am disappointed about is there were a lot of opportunities for the world to make more progress in the direction of dharma, basically to revive Sanatan Dharma, for a spiritual awakening of the world. There were some opportunities, but no opportunities were really taken advantage of this year. As a matter of fact, this year presented a lot of challenges to Sanatan Dharma. If you, for example, look at Bangladesh, what happened in Bangladesh, there is a genocide of Hindus going on in Bangladesh. A stable government there has been replaced by an international conspiracy, and a students' movement was basically provoked, and it was enabled to basically take down the government. And using that as an opportunity, they installed a puppet. The Western deep state has installed a puppet in Bangladesh, and they have given a free rein to radical uh, radical activists, religious activists in Bangladesh. And as we have seen the imagery and videos from Bangladesh, there is a genocide going on in Bangladesh. So instead of basically moving towards dharma, we are actually destroying dharma in a particular important area, basically in the Bangladesh. So that is what I am most disappointed about this year. And unfortunately, this is a tricky situation. This is not something that Indian government can directly control or do something about. And the West, even though the US government is basically kind of controlled by the West, by the Biden administration. They are not willing to pull any strings, so they are letting the genocide go on. So this is the most disappointing thing, unfortunate thing.
Thank you, thank you. This is very important point you brought in because I was going to ask that question about Bangladesh. Now, what happened in Bangladesh is the atrocious atrocities committed on Hindus in every sense of the term: rape, killings, desecration of temples, destruction of temples, and the West is doing nothing. Uncle Sam is doing nothing. Not only that, what surprised me is the shameless belligerence of the Bangladesh government. A foreign minister of that came on a particular show in India and said, "Oh, that is happening. It's overstated. It is misquoted. It didn't happen. It happened in a particular period in time." And they're demanding India supply of thousands of tons of wheat and rice particularly, and India gave the rice. Now tell me one thing: astrological prediction
Mhm.
wise, or intelligence analysis wise, or human intelligence wise, intellectually,
Mhm.
and all things put together, do you mean to say that we had no clue that it was going to happen? Why were we surprised about it? Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I cannot really speak to whether somebody in the Modi ji administration had some idea beforehand that something like this was being orchestrated by the Western deep state. It is possible that they had some intelligence, but the thing is, I don't know how much control they had. Basically, the way it works is every individual or every group of individuals, like a country or state, etc., have periods of strength and periods of vulnerability. That is all we can see basically astrologically. And in a period of vulnerability, somebody can basically take advantage of that vulnerability to ruin you. So if basically Bangladesh is going through a vulnerable period, see, India also went through a similar vulnerable period. If you remember, there were these farmers protests,
Yes.
and again the Western deep state used the same playbook. And at that time, people criticized Modi ji for relenting and basically taking the reforms back, the agricultural reforms back. But it was probably a wise move, because what happens is the Western deep state is very clever. They basically have their own operatives with lot of resources in the country where they are trying to orchestrate trouble, and then they also want to co-opt lot of innocent people who basically genuinely believe in something. So apart from mischief makers, who are basically pretending to be farmer leaders and basically protesting against the farmers, the agricultural reform, there were also other genuine farmers and other people who basically believed in the propaganda, because in the end they're very smart in the propaganda. They believed in the propaganda and they just jumped in. So once there is a certain magnitude in a movement, depending on what you are doing, how you are dealing with, it can backfire on you. So that is the playbook. And Modi ji handled it very capably. Even though it may seem as a loss, sometimes you take your losses instead of going for something more disastrous. And that's what Modi ji did. And unfortunately, I'm afraid Sheikh Hasina was unable to basically recognize that this campaign orchestrated by Western deep state using some tools that they had within the country of Bangladesh, they were also supported by a lot of regular students and regular citizens who genuinely believed in the propaganda and who basically rose up against the Sheikh Hasina government. And they did not read the situation properly, and they unnecessarily also provoked. They engaged in some provocative actions. So the thing is, it's not that Western deep state does things; they trigger things. They act as catalysts. They and their players are catalysts to basically trigger certain chain of events. And once the chain of event progresses beyond a certain point of no return, it is very difficult to basically control it. And unfortunately, that's what happened. So whereas India faced with the same situation a couple of times, not just the farmers protest, you had a couple of other such movements in India in the last couple of years. But every time the Modi administration was very tactful in dealing with the unrest, whereas Sheikh Hasina government was really unsuccessful. But the thing is, now Bangladesh stands at an interesting crossroads. Muhammad Yunus government, they had the tacit support of Western deep state and the Biden administration, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration. They had clear support from them, and even in the previous years from the Obama administration, etc. Yunus is basically a power, a force that was basically stood up by those forces, the democratic establishment in the US. But the thing is now, interestingly, Joe Biden is going to leave and Donald Trump is going to take office. So that he may not be as friendly to Muhammad Yunus. But what you have to realize is it is not really up to the president. It's the Western deep state that controls these things. And the Western deep state still wants Muhammad Yunus to be in charge of Bangladesh, a puppet, so that they can basically control India from that frontier. But the thing is, there are other battles between the deep state and the incoming Trump administration. So they will have to there will be some give and take. So I will not be surprised if Bangladesh is actually a lower priority than some other issues where they want to compromise with Elon Musk, with Vivek Ramaswamy, with Tulsi Gabbard, with Donald Trump. So overall, it is likely that Bangladesh will get less. The current Bangladesh administration will get less support from US going forward. So the thing is, I am afraid, looking at the annual charts of Bangladesh and China, I'm afraid there'll be a nice alignment between China and Bangladesh. So India is in a very tricky situation. India cannot afford to lose Bangladesh to China. Basically, China already has some significant influence in India's neighborhood. They are a strong player in Nepal and with Sri Lanka before a few years back. Now I think things are coming back to normalcy. But a few years back, China made a big move in Sri Lanka and controlled Sri Lanka with an iron hand, and that was a big problem for India. But India is trying to regain some influence in that area. So Bangladesh is a major country. You cannot really afford to lose Bangladesh. So India has a Modi ji government is in a very enviable position of trying to balance basically the interest of Indians and Hindus in Bangladesh, and basically uh, taking anti-Bangladesh actions to weaken Bangladesh, and basically to get some relief for the Hindus who are subjected to genocide in Bangladesh. That is one consideration. But other bigger geopolitical consideration is when US is basically letting things a little loose in Bangladesh. If China is coming in and giving a lot of financial aid and taking some important projects there and trying to get control of strategic places of strategic importance in Bangladesh, India cannot afford to let that happen. So my expectation is India will do a very nice balancing act. It will not go well with lot of Indian right wing activists and people who are driven by Hindutva agenda. They will be unhappy about these developments, but it will be basically driven by a strong sense of Rajadharma, where you want to pick the lesser of two evils. So instead of losing Bangladesh completely to China over the next couple of years, India will do a nice balancing act. And my expectation is Muhammad Yunus will play his cards well. He's a smart man, all said and done. He's a very intelligent man. I expect, based on Bangladesh chart, I expect that they will come out of this successfully. Pakistan is in much bigger trouble than Bangladesh, in my opinion, astrologically. So while Pakistan will be mired in more and more trouble, Bangladesh will pit China and India against each other and get the most out of each country, and there will be some relief after next March or so in terms of the activities against Hindus, the genocide. There'll be some relief. There'll be some concessions made. But the thing is, Bangladesh will win more than India because China is a player. So this is a tough situation for India. But I'm afraid India will manage it pretty decently. But it's a win for Bangladesh, really. Bangladesh, even though right now they are in deep mess, they will navigate this very carefully, very thoughtfully, very smartly, and China will be a big player here. That is my overall assessment in terms of Bangladesh.
Thank you very much for giving the analysis based on the astrological charts of Bangladesh and China, and that India remains in an unenviable scenario of having to deal with or live with the evil. Sometimes,
That's an evil. Yeah.
very, very simple analogy somebody gave me was that compromise is always bad for the
Mm-hmm.
one who is on the dharmic path.
Mm-hmm.
Compromise
Mm-hmm.
is a win for the ones who were doing a dharmic thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is a very interesting dilemma. And the
Yeah.
example given was very simple. You can't have a compromise with two drops of poison in a gallon of milk. The milk is a
Mm-hmm.
loser. That's a very simple, powerful analogy that we have to keep in
Mm-hmm.
mind. But I totally agree with you. I was very happy with Modi ji winning. I had maintained very simple
Mm-hmm.
in this show and on Jaipur Dialogue. I've always said that I don't care what is the margin of victory. I am interested only in the fact that Modi ji does not let the Rahul Gandhi gang hold the trophy of victory. It's like a cricket match.
Yeah.
We won the T20 World Cup by a very, very great catch by by Yadav at the boundary line. If the ball had missed him, nobody would have blamed him, but India would have lost. The whole analysis changes from there on. So the point
Yeah.
which I'm trying to make is that Modi ji's win is absolutely historic for India, and thankfully so, because we do not know what Congress Party and the India Alliance would have done to India. We would
No,
be
we
on.
know. We know.
We
We
know.
know Vibhuti Ji. We
Yeah, yeah.
have
Wait.
precedent.
I was using it as a
Yeah.
statement. The extent
I know.
of
I know.
damage that
I
they would
understand.
do, we would
It would
never
have
have
been disastrous. It would have been
disaster.
disastrous for
Like,
India's role in the world, India's
yeah,
independence in the world.
right. And likewise, I was personally happy that Trump won here because Trump is a different kind of a guy. I believe Trump and Modi have a lot of common purposes around which to work with. So now I want to ask you a tough question, and I want your intellectual input on that more than astrological prediction. But I know you study the charts very well. So combine your wisdom and analysis in that sense. The way the H1B visa issue has led to
Yeah.
such hateful tirade against Hindus and India, including
Yeah.
saying that we are a dirty people. How do
Mm-hmm.
you and I, living in Boston and New York, account for that? Because we are none of it. Because this is the question I asked, that we don't belong to a faith that goes on a rampage and killing of people in anywhere in the world. There is no data for that, nor have we ever
Yeah.
done it. But yet, vested interests, evil interests, are painting us as evil. How does one account for that, and what do we do about it?
Yeah. This is a very current and important question. I've been
Thank you.
following all this debate on the H1B
Yes.
visas, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy versus Lara Loomer and others from the MAGA world. See, I have always maintained I'm a registered independent in US as a voter, and I have always maintained don't basically assume that either Republicans or Democrats your friends. As far as India and Hindus are concerned, we don't really have any friends. The Republican Party is a pro-Christian party, and the Democratic Party is a pro-Muslim party. Neither party is really friendly to Hindus. That is one thing to keep in mind. Having said that, Trump has really nominated a lot of pro-India and pro-Hindu people in his cabinet. So that is an excellent sign. But what you have to remember is Trump depends on MAGA, and MAGA does contain a good percentage, not majority perhaps, but a good percentage of MAGA includes people like Lara Loomer, who basically are racist, and also there are some Christian fundamentalists. Then they don't engage in violence like the Muslim fundamentalists, but they are equally anti-Hindu. Basically, they have an equal amount of hatred for Hindus. What you have to remember is this is not current. This is not about current political parties. This is centuries old. If you look at the Western civilization, especially the Christian countries, they have engaged in propaganda against Hindus for hundreds of years. Even when Swami Vivekananda he came to US for the first time, he had to encounter a lot of hateful propaganda against Hindus. For example, when he was giving speeches in US, he was asked by innocent, I want to emphasize that word, innocent people, oh, do mothers feed their babies to crocodiles in Ganges in India? So this kind of silly propaganda has been around for hundreds of years against India and Hindus in the European countries as well as in US, because the way I look at it, the fundamental reason is this: Christianity, Islam, these are all basically religions based on one book or one prophet, one set of principles. Whereas, see, somebody said, your religion has one book, my religion has one book. So Hinduism is kind of like that religion. It is not based on one book or one prophet. It is based on a series of realized masters, a series of sages, a series of rishis, a collection of so many rishis, and a collection of so many books that basically dissect so many aspects of philosophy, so many aspects of human experience. So it's a very rich heritage. It's a really rich religion, rich tradition. So subconsciously, I'm afraid the Western civilization and the Western religions, the modern religions of Kali Yuga, as I like to call them, they are aware that there is a big danger from Hinduism. There is a big danger from Sanatana Dharma. They have something that is really logical, because if you look at scientists like Tesla, Einstein, they actually praise Hinduism, and they actually said that the fundamental principles of Veda, of Sanatana Dharma, are consistent with modern science, consistent with quantum mechanics, quantum physics. So basically, it is a very logical religion. And moreover, re- today's religions are aware that they are losing people to agnosticism, to atheism, etc. There are a lot of young people who think all this is just nonsense, all this religion, scriptures, all this is nonsense. They just want to use common sense. They're more interested in science, materialism, etc. And the thing is, Hinduism can address such people also. It has basically a perfect, see, there is a subsection of Hinduism which doesn't really acknowledge a personal god also. So if you use various facets of Hinduism, it can address the concerns of anybody in the world. So basically, Hinduism is a complete religion, whereas all these religions are somewhat incomplete, and they are more based on faith and fear rather than addressing your intellectual curiosity, etc. So it is very, so I'm afraid the people who were the people who are following are not aware of all this, but people who are at the center of maintaining control over all these followers, the people who are controlling the religion, they are aware that there is some danger from Sanatana Dharma, danger from Hinduism. We need to suppress it, we need to basically malign it, and we basically that is the way we can win. So that is why, if you see Islam, they always talked about Ghazwaya Hind. They always talked about conquering. Unless you conquer India and basically replace Hinduism with Islam, that is, you don't convert the whole world into Islam basically. So Hinduism, because it has stood the test of time. See, every other local religion of Africa, South America, Australia, everywhere, or North America, every local religion has been either replaced completely or basically weakened to a large extent. It is basically limited to small pockets of practice. Whereas, in spite of being under control of other religions and being persecuted for 1,000 years, Hinduism is still intact. Sanatana Dharma, various aspects of Sanatana Dharma are still intact. Bhakti Yoga is still intact. Jnana Yoga is still intact. Raj Yoga is still intact. Karma Yoga is still intact. Bhagavad Gita is still intact. Vedanta is still intact. So the thing is, so I think people are aware that we need to conquer this. So when you see something far superior to you, you are jealous. You basically do everything that you can do to destroy it. So I think subconsciously in all these modern religions, that instinct is there at the level of people who are controlling those religions. So they were smart to put all this propaganda against India, uh, portray Hindus as idol worshippers, that demonic worshippers, all this stuff. So there are all these dumb stereotypes which basically demean Hindus in the minds of the low level practitioners of those religions. So these perverted notions about Hindus and bias about against Hindus has been there for 200 years, ever since basically Christians came to India and tried to control India. Britishers, British, French, and Portuguese came to India. Ever since then, these these stereotypes have been there, and these have been constructed very intentionally. So this is unfortunate, and I'm not really sure if there is a good way to deal with it. But the thing is, whatever Indians in US have been doing, which is forget about all this. Basically, never resort to violence, resort to intellectual arguments, and also spread awareness of what your practice is. And the other thing is, Vivekananda was very smart. When he came to US, he did not emphasize the worship of Kali. He did not emphasize the worship of Ganesha. He did not emphasize basically various rituals. What he did is he emphasized Vedanta, the philosophy, because that can basically attract the minds of logical people. So basically, you try to spread awareness of Hinduism, especially the more enlightened aspects of Hinduism that are more palatable to the Western intellect, and try to basically spread awareness and things like yoga, Vedanta, etc. And then just hang in there. My suggestion to Hindus in India is just hang in there. Don't take it personally. Just hang in there. And I can tell you one more thing. All this stuff that you see on the social media, it is real. There, racism is there in US as an underbelly. But majority of Americans that I deal with day to day at work or in other interactions, they don't care about all this. They may be religious, they may go to church once every month or so, but the thing is they don't really care. They recognize that there may be other religions which are valid. They basically don't want to judge others. They are pretty non-judgmental. They mind their business. They just care about their family having a good life. So that is the majority of America. So whatever you see on the social media, don't let it distract your understanding of America. In general, Americans are peace loving people. Americans are common sense driven people. So keep that in mind. So don't basically overreact to it. But at the same time, the other interesting thing is we have to organize. We have to basically see in the end, what Laura Loomer says on social media doesn't matter. Who has more say in the government, in the Trump administration? Is it Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, or is it Laura Loomer and other loony gang? That is basically what matters. So, luckily, we have a pro-Hindu and pro-India administration currently, but don't take it for granted. In the end, things change. So make sure that just like some other communities in US have been doing for decades, Indians kind of lack in that spirit of organizing. So basically, be organized more, have political action committees, and then basically have lobbying groups. See, India has stayed away from lobbying groups for a long time, whereas China, Israel, various countries basically they finance some lobbying groups which are acting for their interests. So we have whatever pro-India lobbying happens in US, it is based on individual interest of certain people. What you need to do is you need to raise funds from Indians in India, Indians in US, and also perhaps Indian government needs to get involved in this kind of stuff. So there has to be some organized lobbying that is basically working for pro-Indian, pro-Hindu interests, and we really need to get our act together. We haven't done it a lot in the last few decades, and this is probably a wake-up call. All this acrimony towards Hindus, toward see, they talk about H1B visa and Indians, but if you look at the symbolism, the symbols that they use, and the exact stereotypes that they talk about, they're actually talking about Hindus, not all
Yes,
Indians.
yes, yes.
Christians who may come from India, they're cool with them. This ultra right wing section of MAGA that is making noise on social media these days about against H1B and Indian immigrants. It is basically driven by Christian fundamentalism. So we have to basically try to influence the government. And the other thing is, see, now taking a step back, one thing I can say is See, H1B program needs to be reformed. See, I myself came to US on a H1B visa. I've been a manager, an engineering manager at a big semiconductor company since 2008, many years of management. I have managed several H1B people who are on H1B. I have managed people who came from India, from Bangladesh, from China, from Israel, from various countries, as well as people who are from here, who are born and raised in US. And I have also managed second generation Indians who basically did not need a visa. And I can say that there are smart people from around the world. And but the thing is, there is some exploitation of H1B visa. H1B visa allows you to get smart talent, and when you hire somebody on H1B, you have to make sure that you are paying them at the correct rate, and also you have to advertise that position in newspapers, etc., and show that nobody has applied, and then only you can actually apply for the visa. All those safeguards are there, but companies engage in games. They basically may advertise in a newspaper that nobody sees, and then they may hire at a competitive salary, but the person, while he gets the green card, basically after you hire him for him or her for H1B visa, by the time they get green card, it may be many years. So you may not give them enough raise or bonuses. So basically, you are exploiting that person. That person is working for lower money, so that can cost somebody who's actually local, who doesn't need a visa, his job, because there is somebody available at a lower price. Maybe not at the time the person was hired, but maybe 2 years later, 3 years later. So that kind of exploitation is there. It is real. I have seen it. So uh, and also we do have some not so high skilled talent coming from India on H1B visa, and people who are not really that smart, who are not intellectually very capable. They are just sneaking in through H1B visa. So those incidents are also there. So I hope that this current debate, acrimonious it may be, leads to something positive. See, H1B visa program is very important. We need high skilled labor, but we have to make sure that it is for high skilled labor, not for sneaking in low skilled labor also. Though in technology, basically there is low skilled labor also in the tech world. So we are not using it to sneak in those workers from India or other countries, and also getting them for lower salaries. So make sure that H1B people are paid well. So that, and also give the faster pathway to green card, because some people who come on H1B visa who are really smart, they can really help US economy. So give them a faster pathway to green card. Do away with these country quotas, because people from countries like China and India have to wait much longer time, whereas people from a smaller countries, for example, somebody from Vatican, they have the same quota as India. It's just laughable. So do away with the quotas, make it more rational and common sense driven. So I hope that this whole debate will lead to something positive. I hope that even though Vivek Ramaswamy came under and Elon Musk came under a lot of criticism for this, hopefully they are smart people. They have a lot of common sense. So hopefully they can give good feedback, good inputs to the administration, and some good things will happen out of it. But apart from the H1B itself, the Hindu messiah, the hatred for Hindus, or the intolerance of Hindus, the looking down upon Hindus as some things, as people who are very dumb, who are very lowly, who are doing something demonic, that basically we have to be aware that that does exist. Don't overreact, but basically counter that with our own propaganda. I use propaganda, the word propaganda, but I don't mean it negatively. Our own basically PR and reach out basically.
Propagation is key. Building the
Exactly.
narrative is key. That's very important.
Narrative building. See,
Several
we are
several points.
at
Yeah.
narrative building. We have to build the narrative.
We have to build the narrative. That's what we are doing today in our,
Yeah.
your, and my conversation. The point also is very, you said so many things. Very important is that the religion is based on fear and faith. I add one more: fear, ignorance, and faith. When you get
Mhm.
driven by those three considerations, you don't see logic. Fear has no logic to it, right? So that's what is
Yeah.
important, and we have to take this forward. And I have maintained throughout my television career that this century belongs to us. The question is whether we will be able to do it, fight it, or we will retreat in oversimplification of something and become too peaceful and too calm and let the dharmic thing suffer. But important part here is again is the what you said. Swami Vivekananda talked about Vedanta and everything else. How do you see the Indian individual? Because we are very individualistic people. I call it the Hindu trash is Hindu's worst enemy. There are people who are masquerading as Vishwanathan Jha and others names, and they are the worst enemies of Hindus, and they are the ones who are being used by these people. So you took the name of the extremist in the Christian world or the MAGA world, but my theory is always it is always the extreme that drives the argument. It is always the extreme that sets the narrative. Middle never does that. It is the extreme on either side that forces a conversation or an issue. So here is the important part. We were branded by the ultra right MAGA people as dirty, evil. Look at Indians, the way they live their life. Oh, they are prosperous here because of us, not because of them. And all the negative thing that came about is because they would not do this negative thing against any other community, only us, is because they know that these group of people never respond. They're too peace loving.
Tolerant.
We can bully the guy. In school and colleges, we know the story that the nerd or the weakest guy would always get harassed by the big guys in the school, right? We have become that. How does one overcome that part of it intellectually and as well as organizationally?
Very loaded questions. See, a couple of points I want to make, somewhat related. Number one, there are Hindus there are Indians and are also Hindus who are engaged in anti-Hindu propaganda. They forward this narrative that is against Hindus. So we have basically enemies within us. That is absolutely true. But the thing is, we can't change them. They are there basically. They are being given a voice. They are being given a platform by people who hate us outside of us. Similarly, we have to do the same to them. The way you fight your enemy is if they basically have some spice among within you, you basically find spice among them. So there are within US, there may be people who are against Christianity, and within the Islamic world, there are people who are against Islam, and we don't do a good job of enabling them. They fight on their own, but the thing is, we don't collaborate with them. Just like the Christian missionaries who are trying to spread Christianity in India, they collaborate with anti-Hindu Indians basically, or people who are born as Hindus but turned against Hinduism. They collaborate with them, but we don't. We think that it's dirty, it's unprincipled. No, it's not. Using basically, see, Rama killed Wali from behind the. He was basically not seen by Wali when he killed him. From behind the tree, he basically he used his bow and arrow to kill Wali. So that's not wrong. Similarly, Sri Krishna, he told Dharmaraja to lie. Ashwatthama hataha kunjaraha. So
Yeah,
like
right.
that, basically, yeah. So like that, if you basically do things that are considered to be wrong, considered to be dishonest, but your purpose, your goal is actually the correct goal, it is not wrong. So we have a false and very docile, very pacifist sense of dharma where we think that, oh, we should not do these dirty things. Whereas if others are doing dirty things against you, you have to do the same. So, like I said earlier, Hindus have to be organized and we have to have our own lobbying group, and they have to basically fund, they have to spend money to encourage some anti-Christianity, anti-Islam activists who are from those communities. Then they'll be more credible instead of you and me saying something about the weaknesses of other religions. If people who are from those backgrounds are speaking out against those backgrounds, it will be more credible. So we have to enable them, give them a platform, give them a voice. So that is one thing we have to do. The other thing is, if the hatred for Hindus that we see in some sections now, it has happened in the past against other groups also. Whenever a group is becoming too popular, their percentage as a population percentage in US is increasing beyond a certain threshold, and they are increasing their clout and political and monetary power financial power, there was basically outcry against them. It happened against Japanese, it happened against uh, Irish, it happened against Italians. But the thing is, now they're part of the mainstream US society. They basically are part of the main power center. All the Italian people, Irish people, etc. But there was a time when they were seen as too different from us. They are dirty. They have weird habits. We have to basically, we can't allow them. So in a way, even though this is disappointing, I see it as a kind of affirmation, and as a kind of affirmation that we are actually rising in our prominence in US politics, that people are basically talking about us. So don't be too disheartened. Organize, basically speak out in a very mature way. Don't be overly aggressive. Don't overreact, and basically speak out, bring out the facts, and then just let it play out over time. Because in the past, whenever this kind of propaganda came up against any group, it basically died down eventually, even though it seemed like it was winning in the short term. And then that other group became more mainstream. So this is basically a way to make the Indian Americans more mainstream in the American society. So and one thing you said, I completely agree with. This is the century of India and Sanatan Dharma, in my opinion. But the thing is, the transition is never easy. This decade is going to be very painful, but at the end of the decade, and in the beginning of next decade, and particularly middle of next decade, by that time, India will be sufficiently powerful. India will be sufficiently wealthy, and US and other countries, other Western countries, would have been weakened a bit. So, and China, which is rising now, it will also have weakened a bit. So when you also have material strength to accompany your dharmic strength, then basically people will take notice and people will listen to you. So I'm very confident that India will keep rising materially, and it will end up influencing the spread of Sanatana Dharma across the world, with India as the epicenter. So I
Thank
take
you.
it, I
Thank.
take this as a challenging time that India will come through successfully.
I'm sure it will. And I like, for example, but then I always also say one thing is that somewhere along the line, we have to take the reality bite very seriously. Say, for example, yes, as Sanatan, as Hindu Dharma philosophy has survived all these years of attack, but the reality is also that Sanatan Dharma Hindu philosophy doesn't survive in Kashmir, doesn't survive in Afghanistan, doesn't
Yeah.
survive in Pakistan. Sindhi don't have a country. It doesn't survive. Jhulelal doesn't live in Sindh anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Barring, I'm talking about the official policy. In Bangladesh, it
Yeah.
doesn't survive anymore. And many pockets of India, it doesn't survive anymore. That's
Hmm.
why the concept of Ghazwa-e Hind is
Hmm.
designed to make us homeless in our own homeland. And that's what is important for all Hindus to understand and awaken to that tough reality that you could be rendered homeless in your own home. And that's what we have to,
Hmm.
rise up to fight against. Now, I want to come back to the 2025. We have talked about the problems and everything else. They are the same. How does one go about in the year 2025? I'm sure you have done the analysis of the astrological part. How does 2025 look like? What's your message to us? Like you said, Bangladesh will manage China and India, classic, using the
Tactfully.
two to tactfully. But a country that is impoverished, has no food to eat, can it actually do that to two big countries like that? What is in their stars? So, what is in the
Because they
stars
have,
for us?
yeah,
How
because
does
they
it
are
work?
strategically placed, because they are strategically positioned in the globe, so they can take advantage of that. But the thing is, forget about Bangladesh. It's really, even though the genocide in Bangladesh is something that is really shaking us to the core for the last few months, I do expect some respite in the coming months. But the thing is, Bangladesh is really a small player overall. This is a very, if you look at the whole world, this is, in my uh, opinion, unfortunately, this is a very challenging year. This is somewhat like 2020. The way I look at it, whatever happened a century back is playing, not exactly in the same term, but in terms of patterns, is playing out again a century later. but basically with a shortened time span because of the compressed world, because world is now more connected. What happened in 1918, 1919 with the Spanish flu is basically the analogous to what happened in 2020, 2021 with the coronavirus, COVID-19. So that's basically the trigger of a major change. And then 2030, 2031 will be a period when there will be a major clash between superpowers, China and India. Of course, there may be some clash in the Taiwan region earlier, like 2027, 2028 period, but the culmination is 2031, 2032, when either a world war or something very close to world war, which is averted in the end. But the thing is, something really disastrous. A big clash between the superpowers is 2030, 2031. So that is analogous to what happened with the World War II, late 1930s, 1939, 1940, 1945. So that period, whatever happened, similar things will happen in 2030, 2031, 2032 time period. And then right now, 2025, 2026 are analogous to 1929, 1930, 1931 period. Half the way between the final war and the trigger in terms of the pandemic. So that is when the Great Depression happened. So I'm afraid in the 2025, 2026 period, there'll be major uh, economic problems, basically serious problems with the economy. So this is a, and the other thing I expect is, in there are two major things happening in 2025. One is Guru is in Atichara. Guru Brahaspati, the Jupiter planet, is in Atichara. Atichara means he's moving faster than usual. So whether he's going backward or forward, he's moving faster than usual. Same thing happened in 2019, 2020 period when the pandemic came and there was a lot of problems. In general, what Shastra says, Guru is a personification of our intellect. In individual, the Jupiter in his chart shows his intellect, his wisdom, his discretion between discretion and knowing right from wrong. And cosmically, he shows the collective intellect of the universe. And when Jupiter is in Atichara, the collective intellect of the world that we inhabit will be kind of messed up. When Jupiter is going slowly, just like when you're sitting still, you can focus better. When you're moving fast, you can't focus, you can't see, you can't do your job well. So when Guru
Mhm.
is in Atijara, the collective intellect, collective consciousness will make some dumb decisions. It will not basically do the right thing. So it is a time conducive to some bad things basically happening because of our collective failure as a civilization. So, and this is the time when Guru is also known as Jiva. So this is a time when a lot of destruction can happen when Guru is in Atijara. That is one thing. The other thing is there is a Shashtagraha Kota, which is basically 6 planets being together in a sign. And it's not even a sign, a zodiacal sign, 30 degrees. Actually, half a zodiacal sign. Within half a zodiacal sign, there are going to be 6 planets. Uh, Saturn and Rahu at the beginning of Pisces, and a few degrees away from them, Mercury and Venus, and then a few degrees away from them, Sun and Moon, the luminaries, who personify our soul and mind. So this is a very problematic conjunction, and a similar thing happened, but not in Meena, Pisces, but in Makara, which is Capricorn. It happened in late 2019. So that is what triggered the pandemic. So some astrologers expect another pandemic this time, but my assessment is that was the sign of Saturn, who shows diseases, suffering, etc. So it was a pandemic. Now this is a sign of Jupiter, and also it is a sign of Pisces, a watery sign, and also a sign of spiritual awakening. So and also it is a sign of basically being conscious of nature and being basically more connected with nature. So my assessment is, see, astrology doesn't tell you this will happen. It gives you a spectrum of possibilities.
Right,
So it is
right.
tough to know exactly which one will happen. But what is likely is some water-related disaster, a major disaster, something that we haven't seen in a long time is possible. A major tsunami that will take down, that will basically in which a major coastal area will sink is possible during the coming year,
What's the
especially in the
time
March,
frame? What is
March,
the
April,
time?
May time period. March, April,
Okay.
May time period is the likely time period. So in the first half of the year, so there is a major disaster. For example, chart of Bangladesh does not rule out the possibility that something like that may happen in Bangladesh. A major cyclone or a major tsunami and major destruction of life is possible in Bangladesh during this year. Though they will manage geopolitics well, some natural disasters are possible in Bangladesh this year. So that is Bangladesh is one possibility, and some coastal areas of US also can't be ruled out. So some coastal areas being affected by a major tsunami, and in general increased incidence of natural disasters like earthquakes, cyclones, and hurricanes, etc., and increased loss of life because of these may turn the attention to environmental change. Basically, the climate change is a very sensitive topic in US. India is actually doing lot of innovation in dealing with climate change, green energy, etc. India and China are at the forefront of it, but the current right-wing administration in US is kind of in climate denial. At the same time, the Democrats are not any better. They just use it to, they just talk and they just motivate their voters, but they do nothing. Or sometimes they may even do things that are actually not conducive. They're actually they're actually bad for you in the long term, though they may seem like, oh, you're doing something about it. So unfortunately, in US, both sides are either in denial or basically overreaction. Hopefully, there is a possibility, given the Shashtagra quota, some events will happen this year that will trigger a conversation which may actually result in something positive in terms of dealing with the crisis.
That's right.
Because this is a crisis for our civilization. And when I say Sanatan Dharma, rise of Sanatan Dharma, I'm not just talking about people worshipping Rama, Krishna, Shiva. We, for us, Prakriti is mother, nature is divine mother. So being basically recognizing that we are parts of the whole world is connected, and being responsible towards the world around us instead of being selfish and exploiting whatever is around us, whether it's human beings or nature. That's not Sanatan Dharma. So when I say this century, this decade will be very tumultuous, very catastrophic, but it will basically take people towards Sanatan Dharma. One of the aspects is also nature, basically. So some environmental responsibility is likely to come during this year. That is one thing. And major natural disasters are possible. And one more thing is, I can't put my finger on it, but I said the same thing in 2019. I said in my 2019 Panchanga Shravanam that this is probably the last normal year, and next few years will be different. I'm not sure if I'll do Panchanga Shravan in the same way I said in my 2019 Panchanga Shravan. So I kind of said the similar thing in 2024 Panchanga Shravan. It was a relatively normal year. There will be some unseen developments. I'm not sure what kind of developments those are, but some unexpected developments that will make us reevaluate the priorities. By us, I don't mean you and me, but the governments, whether the Trump administration, Modi administration, some shocks that will basically make you reevaluate the priorities and basically pivot will happen in 2025. This is, in general, a very, very problematic year, and this will basically act as a catalyst towards the Cold War between US and China rising to the next level, that a confrontation over Taiwan in the Southeast China Sea will be unavoidable towards the end of this decade. So some developments along those lines are likely to be triggered during this year. In general, 2025 and 2026 are very problematic years for the world. So again, one small word there is, when the world is in chaos, it's a time to basically go inward and basically have some spiritual practice that grounds you, so that you maintain some equanimity, so that you can make your own decisions with some level of calmness and intelligence. So focus on spiritual sadhana during this year in general.
Thank you. Very powerful. I mean, you have given adequate amount of warning, and also indicated that every disaster also brings about an opportunity to do things right. And that's what you are pointing out, that sometimes it takes nature to force a decision on you. If you don't do it, knowing what you know, the nature will force certain things on you. That said,
Actually, can I just add one word? Can I
yeah,
can I just add one word,
please,
Vibhuti
please,
ji?
please. Yeah,
It is not exactly true that every disaster will, actually it is true that every disaster will give us an opportunity to do the
yes,
right thing,
yeah.
to make progress. But unfortunately, most times when you get a disaster, you don't do the right things, you react wrongly. But I'm really optimistic that we are in a phase for humanity when disasters will actually make us do the right thing and go in the right direction. So that is basically, though I said that 2025 and 2026 are periods of disasters, I also think that these are periods when they will actually inspire us to do the right thing. So I'm very
Right.
optimistic that way.
Good. That's the point which I was also trying to say. The one thing which I wanted to ask you on a lighter note as we end the year and step into the next year is that how often does an astrologer, and as wise a guy like you, and a scientific mind like you, allows his personal bias to make a call on astrological study?
If you care about something deeply, it will affect you, and
It-
it also depends on your own chart. If you are vulnerable, basically depending on how Guru is transiting in your chart, how Shani and
yeah,
Rahu are transiting in your charts, you can basically be affected by, when you think there is something at stake for you, you can be affected by your own biases. So it
that's right.
is, that is why some astrologers say that don't predict for yourself. Though I made very successful predictions for myself, because I
Okay.
tend to be unbiased in my own case. It depends where you are biased, what you care about strongly. That basically is where your biases will come in. So if there
Right.
is something that you are very strongly feel like you care about something, there is a good chance that you will be biased. So and also look at your own time, basically how your time is. So one thing I noticed is, if I make a prediction when Jupiter is in Lagna or Jupiter is aspecting Lagna, they tend to be more correct. Whereas if I make a prediction when Shani is in Lagna, Rahu is in Lagna, then basically there's a higher chance that I will be deluded, or I'll basically, because there are all the factors are in front of you, you have to focus on
Yeah.
the right
Yeah.
factors. You may go with the wrong factors when Shani or Rahu are affecting the Lagna when I make a prediction. So this is something that I have found in practice. So there are various factors, but it is, I personally recommend using astrology as indicative, not
Yes.
as a suggestive thing, not basically be biased by it. If you think that time is good for you, be a little extra aggressive and take some chances. If the time is very bad for you, be extra cautious and don't take too many chances. Other than that, don't assume that things will happen. In the end, your efforts will result in good or bad happening to you. So but astrology can give you an indication. It's not deterministic, it's only probabilistic.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I wanted to request the viewers as we end the year and we step into the next year. I hope, trust, pray that yours, and everybody's 2025 is better than what it was in 2024. And an important take from today's conversation would be dirty things will happen, bad things happen, good things will happen. Is how we respond to that is
Yeah.
important. That's very important. Good things are happening, bad things will happen. Friends will deceive you, friends will feel deceived by you. It's part of life. It will happen because misunderstanding is a part of human nature. Take it
Mhm.
with a smile, move on. And as the saying goes, I have a very favorite song of mine. Celebrate New Year. It's a movement of a day, right? It's not something big. It's a movement of a day. And then there is a famous Hemant Kumar song, I think. I hope PVRG follows that Hindi that much. फिर वही शाम फिर वही गम फिर वही तन्हाई है
No,
दिल को
I love
पहला
Hindi songs. Hemant Kumar, I love.
या
Uh-huh.
दिल को बहलाने तेरी याद चली आई है. So, remember that part. Life is good. Make it good. And when you see something wrong, do it right. The important part is mistakes will always happen, but how you respond to the mistake is critical to your and my life. So, in this particular thing, the attack on Hindus, H1B, in my 30 years of life in America, I have never seen that as strong and as vicious by certain groups of people. What does it mean? We don't take it lying down. That's what is important. I'll share a very interesting story. Somebody asked me, what is this arati you do, Om Jai Jagdish Hare? Somebody asked me. You guys in temples and homes, you do that very often. What does it mean? And it immediately struck me. And I was very proud of that narrative that I created out of that arati. I said, stanza 2 of this arati symbolizes the entire art. The rest of them are, part of that entire thing. And that was Jo dhyave phal pave, dukh vinshe man ka, sukh sampati ghar aave, kasht mite tan ka. So when I explained to him in English, he said, teach me, I want to do this. So think about it from that perspective. Everything that happens to you is towards that. So if you are able to explain the narrative, today that man, whether he sings or not, but I taught him. That's the meaning of life. So with these words, I wish you a very happy new year, a great life ahead, a great time ahead, a safe time ahead, and a wisdom that allows you to act appropriately. Narasimha Raoji, thank you so much for being with us today. And, we will talk again. Thank you.